And, you know, I know Madeleine was very happy with her life. Special.
It's clear to us he's a suspect now because of everything we found out.
Not certain that it was investigated properly at the beginning, and I still don't think it's been.
This is disturbingly true. On May 3rd, 2007, 3-year-old Madeleine McCann vanished from her bed during a family holiday in Portugal. For 13 years, this case has baffled investigators, generated over 8,600 reported sightings across 100 countries, and consumed millions in investigative resources. Parents Kate and Jerry McCann have endured unimaginable anguish, false accusations, and countless false leads. But in June 2020, everything changed. German prosecutors made a stunning announcement. They had identified the man responsible for Madeleine's disappearance.
These are possible similarities between the suspect, Christian B., and other people who have committed crimes.
Not just a suspect, but someone they claim to know with certainty killed the British toddler. The evidence they've uncovered is disturbing, compelling, and potentially case-solving. Cell phone data placing him at the crime scene. Buried USB drives containing horrific images. A drunken confession to a friend. A pattern of violence against children spanning decades. This is the story of how investigators finally cracked the world's most famous missing person case. The McCann family arrived in Praia da Luz on April 28, 2007, for what should have been a perfect week-long holiday. The Ocean Club Resort was considered safe, family-friendly, and had welcomed British tourists for generations. Jerry and Kate McCann, both respected doctors from Leicestershire, had brought their 3 young children, Madeleine and 2-year-old twins Sean and Amelie. The family quickly settled into a comfortable routine. During the day, the children attended the resort's kids club, while the adults relaxed by the pool. Each evening, after putting the children to bed in their ground-floor apartment, the McCanns would join 7 friends at the tapas restaurant, located just 50 yards away. The group had established a checking system. Every 15 minutes, one of the adults would walk back to the apartments to ensure all the children were sleeping safely. The apartments were left unlocked to make these checks easier, a decision that would later be heavily scrutinized. May 3rd started like any other day. Madeleine attended the kids club, played tennis, and spent time at the pool. She was described as a bright, confident child who looked like her mother, Kate, but had inherited her father's outgoing personality. That evening, Kate put all 3 children to bed around 7:30 p.m. Madeleine was wearing pink pajamas and clutching her favorite stuffed animal, a pink cat she called Cuddle Cat. At 8:30 p.m., the McCanns left for dinner, leaving the patio door unlocked as usual. The first check at 9:05 p.m. was performed by Jerry, who found all 3 children sleeping peacefully. At 9:15 p.m., their friend Jane Tanner went to check on her own child and passed by the McCann apartment. She noticed a man walking away from the area carrying a small child in pajamas. The child's feet were bare, and she appeared to be about 3 or 4 years old. At 10 p.m., it was Kate's turn to check. She entered the apartment and immediately noticed the bedroom door was wider open than she had left it. The twins were still sleeping, but Madeleine's bed was empty. Kate searched the apartment frantically, then ran back to the restaurant screaming, "Madeleine's gone! Someone has taken her!" The Portuguese police were contacted at 10:15 p.m., but their initial response was criticized as inadequate. Officers seemed to believe Madeleine had wandered off and would return on her own. Valuable time was lost as the search wasn't properly organized until the following morning. By then, if Madeleine had been abducted, the perpetrator had a 10-hour head start. The disappearance of Madeleine McCann quickly became the most high-profile missing person case in modern history. Within 24 hours, her photograph was on front pages worldwide. The combination of a photogenic child, professional middle-class parents, and the mysterious circumstances captured global attention in an unprecedented way. The Portuguese police, led by Inspector Gonçalo Amaral, struggled with the international scrutiny. Portuguese law prevented them from sharing details about ongoing investigations, creating an information vacuum that was quickly filled with speculation and rumors. The lack of transparency frustrated both the media and the McCann family, who felt they were being kept in the dark about efforts to find their daughter. The first major lead came from Jane Tanner's sighting of a man carrying a child near the Ocean Club around 9:15 p.m. She described him as being of average height, with dark hair, wearing a dark jacket and beige trousers. The child he was carrying appeared to be wearing light-colored pajamas and had blonde hair. This description matched Madeleine's appearance and clothing that night. However, Portuguese police initially showed little interest in this crucial testimony. Tanner later recalled being frustrated by their dismissive attitude and their failure to take detailed statements about what she had witnessed. This lead wouldn't be properly investigated until years later. Within a week, suspicion fell on Robert Murat, a 33-year-old British expatriate who lived just 100 yards from the Ocean Club. Murat had inserted himself into the investigation, offering to help with translation and appearing at the resort after news of the disappearance broke. Several witnesses claimed he was acting suspiciously, asking detailed questions about the investigation and seeming overly interested in the case. Murat's mother, Jennifer, provided him with an alibi, claiming he had been at home with her all evening on May 3rd. However, 3 of the McCann's friends, Jane Tanner, Fiona Payne, and Russell O'Brien, all claimed to have seen Murat near the Ocean Club that night, contradicting his alibi. On May 14th, Portuguese police declared Murat their first official suspect. They searched his house and questioned him extensively, but found no evidence linking him to Madeleine's disappearance. The investigation seemed to be stalling, with no concrete leads emerging despite massive media attention and public interest. As weeks passed without progress, public opinion began to shift. The initial wave of sympathy for the McCann family started to give way to criticism of their decision to leave 3 young children alone while they dined out. The phrase, "How could they leave the children?" became a common refrain in media coverage and public discussion. The Portuguese investigation was also hampered by basic procedural errors. The crime scene wasn't properly secured, allowing contamination of potential evidence. Forensic examinations were delayed, and crucial evidence like cell phone data from the area wasn't immediately analyzed. These failures would prove costly as the investigation progressed. By late summer 2007, the Portuguese police were under enormous pressure to produce results. The case had become a national embarrassment, with criticism mounting about their handling of the investigation. It was in this context that they would make their most controversial decision yet. 3 months after Madeleine's disappearance, the investigation took a dramatic turn. In August 2007, Portuguese police brought in specially trained British sniffer dogs to search the McCann's apartment and rental car. These dogs were trained to detect the scent of human blood and cadavers, substances that might indicate a death had occurred. The dogs showed interest in several areas of apartment 5A, particularly behind the sofa in the living room and in the parents' bedroom. More significantly, they also reacted to the trunk of the Renault Scenic that the McCanns had rented at 25 days after Madeleine's disappearance. The dogs' behavior suggested they had detected the scent of blood and possibly decomposition. Samples were taken from both locations and sent to the Forensic Science Service laboratory in Birmingham, England, for DNA analysis. The results were far from conclusive. The blood found in the apartment was determined not to belong to Madeleine. The DNA profile from the rental car was described as complex and incomplete, with the laboratory stating that the results were too complex for meaningful interpretation. Despite the inconclusive forensic evidence, Portuguese police made a shocking decision. On September 7, 2007, exactly 4 months after Madeleine's disappearance, they declared Kate and Jerry McCann as arguidos, formal suspects in their own daughter's disappearance. The timing of this decision raised serious questions about the investigation's competence. Crime experts argued that the parents should have been thoroughly investigated and either eliminated or confirmed as suspects within days of the disappearance, not months later after other avenues had been exhausted. Kate McCann was questioned for 11 hours over 2 days. She later revealed that Portuguese investigators had pressured her to sign a confession, admitting that Madeleine had died accidentally in the apartment and that she and Jerry had disposed of the body and staged an abduction to cover up their involvement. The proposed scenario was that Madeleine had died from an overdose of sedatives that her parents, both doctors, had given her to help her sleep. The investigators suggested that the McCanns had then hidden the body, disposed of it during the weeks following the disappearance, and maintained the fiction of an abduction. Kate refused to sign the confession, later telling her family, "Why would I sign that confession? If an accident had happened, we wouldn't have hidden it." The interrogation was conducted in Portuguese with translation, adding another layer of complexity to an already stressful situation. The theory prosecutors presented had several major flaws. The rental car that supposedly contained DNA evidence wasn't rented until 25 days after Madeleine's disappearance. If the parents had been involved in disposing of their daughter's body, they would have had to kill her, hide the body for nearly a month while being watched by international media, retrieve it, transport it in the rental car, and dispose of it again, all without being detected. The forensic evidence also didn't support the prosecution's theory. The DNA results were inconclusive, and the laboratory report stated that the genetic profile could match thousands of individuals. The blood in the apartment was definitively not Madeleine's, and there was no evidence of cleaning or attempts to remove biological material. Despite these weaknesses in the case, the McCann family found themselves in an impossible position. They were suspects in their own daughter's disappearance, unable to leave Portugal without permission, and facing intense media scrutiny that portrayed them as potential killers. The British press was divided in its coverage. Some newspapers continued to support the family and question the Portuguese investigation, while others ran sensational headlines suggesting the parents' guilt. The tabloid coverage became increasingly aggressive, with some publications making claims that would later result in substantial libel payouts. On September 9, 2007, the McCanns were allowed to return to England, but their ordeal was far from over. They remained official suspects while living under intense media scrutiny and public suspicion. The McCann family's return to England in September 2007 marked the beginning of a long and painful period of living under suspicion. The British tabloid press launched a relentless campaign of speculation and innuendo, with headlines suggesting the parents were responsible for their daughter's disappearance. Newspapers ran stories claiming Kate McCann had acted strangely after Madeleine's disappearance, that the family had been too calm during press conferences, and that their behavior suggested guilt. These reports were largely based on speculation and amateur psychology, rather than factual evidence. The media frenzy created what experts described as a trial by newspaper, where public opinion was shaped by sensational headlines rather than evidence. Online forums and social media platforms became breeding grounds for conspiracy theories and accusations against the McCanns. The family's spokesman, Clarence Mitchell, worked tirelessly to counter the negative coverage, but the damage was extensive. The McCanns received death threats, their other children were subjected to taunting at school, and they were forced to live under constant security protection. Despite the hostile media environment, the search for Madeleine continued. The McCanns hired private investigators and launched their own publicity campaigns to keep the case in the public eye. They established a fund to finance search efforts and employed several different investigative teams over the years. In 2008, a Spanish private investigator named Francisco Marco claimed to have located Madeleine in Morocco. He provided detailed reports and even claimed to have photographed the child. The McCanns traveled to Morocco based on this information, but the lead proved to be false. Marco later admitted he had fabricated the evidence to extract money from the family, suffering from mental health issues, and had invented the sighting. The case generated thousands of reported sightings from around the world. Madeleine was allegedly seen in Morocco, Spain, France, Belgium, Germany, Australia, New Zealand, and dozens of other countries. Each sighting had to be investigated, consuming resources and raising false hopes for the family. Some sightings seemed particularly promising. In 2010, a girl matching Madeleine's description was spotted in India with a European couple. The Indian authorities investigated extensively, but the child was identified as a local girl who had been adopted by foreign visitors. The most significant development during this period was the launch of a formal case review by the British government. In 2010, Home Secretary Theresa May commissioned the Metropolitan Police to conduct a comprehensive review of the Portuguese investigation and identify any missed opportunities or overlooked evidence. The review, led by Deputy Assistant Commissioner Martin Hewitt, took over a year to complete. The team examined 40,000 pieces of evidence, reviewed statements from 500 witnesses, and identified 195 investigative opportunities that had been missed by the original investigation. The review found that Portuguese police had failed to properly investigate known sex offenders in the area, hadn't analyzed cell phone data from the night of the disappearance, and had dismissed potentially crucial witness testimony. The report concluded that the investigation had been chaotic, and that basic police procedures hadn't been followed. Based on the review's findings, the British government authorized a full reinvestigation of the case. Operation Grange was launched in 2011 with a budget of £12 million, making it one of the most expensive missing person investigations in British history. Operation Grange brought fresh eyes to the case and modern investigative techniques. The team used advanced computer analysis to examine the evidence, created detailed timelines of events, and employed new forensic methods to analyze existing evidence. The investigation re-examined Jane Tanner's sighting of a man carrying a child near the Ocean Club. While they were unable to definitively identify this individual, the sighting remains one of the key pieces of evidence in the case. Jeremy Wilkins, a British tourist who was in the area that evening, was speaking with Madeleine McCann at the time, but investigators have not confirmed he was the person Tanner observed. The investigation also used age progression technology to create images of what Madeleine might look like years after her disappearance. These images were distributed worldwide and generated hundreds of new tips and potential sightings. By 2016, Operation Grange had investigated over 8,600 reported sightings and examined more than 650 sex offenders. Despite this massive effort, no credible leads had emerged, and the case seemed destined to remain unsolved. The breakthrough that investigators had been waiting for over 13 years came from an unexpected source. In 2017, German authorities received a tip that would dramatically shift the focus of the Madeleine McCann investigation. According to reports, an informant reached out to police claiming that Christian Bruckner, a German national serving time for drug-related offenses, had made an unsettling confession while under the influence at a bar, suggesting that he knew what had happened to Madeleine. Initially, the tip was met with skepticism. Over the years, authorities had been inundated with false leads, many from individuals seeking attention or struggling with credibility issues. This time was different. The informant provided specific, verifiable details about Bruckner's past and his ties to the Praia da Luz area in Portugal, where Madeleine vanished. As investigators delved into Bruckner's background, they uncovered a troubling pattern. His criminal history spanned more than 30 years, beginning with a theft charge at age 15. More concerning were serious offenses in his youth, including a conviction in Germany related to the abuse of a minor when he was just 17. Instead of serving his sentence, Bruckner fled Germany and relocated to Portugal, a move that allowed him to evade justice for years. Further investigation revealed that Bruckner had lived in and around Praia da Luz between 1995 and 2007. He was familiar with the local area and often stayed in temporary accommodations, including a residence located just about a mile from the Ocean Club resort where Madeleine was last seen. Bruckner led a transient lifestyle, frequently residing in a Volkswagen camper van and relying on petty crimes for income. His criminal activity primarily involved breaking into homes and tourist accommodations, similar to the environment in which Madeleine had been staying. The timing of his presence was a critical detail. Portuguese police had arrested Bruckner for theft in 2006, 1 year before Madeleine's disappearance. However, it appeared that they were unaware of his prior convictions in Germany, an oversight that may have significantly affected the trajectory of the original investigation. What raised even more concern was the discovery that Bruckner had been linked to other serious offenses during his time in Portugal. In 2005, he was suspected of attacking a 72-year-old woman in her home near Lagos, a town just a few miles from Praia da Luz. The crime was described by authorities as premeditated and brutal, and it displayed a familiarity with the area that closely aligned with the nature of Madeleine's case. This earlier incident painted a disturbing picture. a man with a record of serious criminal behavior operating within the same region at the same time, with demonstrated knowledge of local routines and environments. To investigators, this connection gave new weight to the possibility that Christian Bruckner could have been involved in Madeleine's disappearance. As the investigation into Christian Bruckner's past progressed, authorities uncovered a pattern of behavior that closely aligned with the profile of someone who could have been involved in the disappearance of a child. According to German crime analyst Mark Hoffman, Bruckner showed traits often associated with individuals who lack remorse or empathy. His record extended beyond his time in Portugal. In 2016, German police searched a rundown factory in Saxony-Anhalt that Bruckner had previously owned. The most compelling piece of evidence linking Christian Bruckner to Madeleine McCann's disappearance came from cell phone data analysis. German investigators discovered that on May 3, 2007, approximately 1 hour before Madeleine was discovered missing, a phone call was made to Bruckner's cell phone. German prosecutors revealed that a phone call was made to Bruckner's phone on the evening of May 3, 2007. Cell tower data showed that Bruckner's phone was in the immediate vicinity of the Ocean Club Resort when the call was received. This placed him at the scene of the crime at a crucial time, just as the McCann family was putting their children to bed and preparing for their evening out. This evidence was particularly significant because it could have been discovered much earlier in the investigation. Cell phone data had been captured by telecommunications companies in 2007, but Portuguese police had never properly analyzed it. If they had, Bruckner might have been identified as a suspect 13 years earlier. The identity of the person who made the call to Bruckner's phone remains one of the most important unanswered questions in the case. The call was made from a prepaid phone, making it extremely difficult to trace. German prosecutors believed that identifying this caller could provide crucial evidence about Bruckner's activities and intentions that night. Hans Christian Wolters, the German prosecutor leading the investigation, has made repeated public appeals for information about this mystery caller. He believes this person's testimony could be the key to proving that Bruckner was not only in the area but actively involved in communication related to the crime. The timing of the call is particularly suspicious. It occurred during the period when the McCann family was establishing their evening routine, the same routine they had followed all week. If someone had been watching the family, they would have known that the children were being put to bed and that the parents would soon be leaving for dinner. Bruckner's behavior immediately after Madeleine's disappearance was also highly suspicious. On May 4th, just 1 day after the disappearance, he re-registered his Jaguar car in someone else's name. This action suggested he was attempting to distance himself from any potential evidence or connection to the crime. The timing of this vehicle registration was particularly significant. Bruckner had owned the car for months without any apparent need to transfer ownership. The fact that he chose to do this immediately after the most high-profile crime in the area suggested consciousness of guilt. Shortly after re-registering his vehicle, Bruckner quietly left Portugal and returned to Germany. This pattern of fleeing countries after committing crimes was consistent with his previous behavior. He had fled Germany to avoid serving his sentence for child abuse, and now he was fleeing Portugal in the immediate aftermath of Madeleine's disappearance. Hans Christian Wolters, the German prosecutor leading the case against Christian Bruckner, has shown unprecedented confidence in his investigation. In June 2020, he made the extraordinary public statement that German authorities were certain of Bruckner's guilt in Madeleine McCann's disappearance and death. "We have strong evidence that Christian B. killed Madeleine McCann," Wolters announced at a press conference, using only the suspect's first name and initial in accordance with German privacy laws. This level of certainty was unprecedented in the 13-year investigation and suggested that prosecutors possessed evidence that had not been made public. When pressed about the nature of this evidence, Wolters was careful to respect German legal restrictions while still indicating the strength of his case. He confirmed that investigators did not have Madeleine's body or forensic evidence from the crime scene, but insisted they had other evidence that supported their conclusion. The prosecutor's confidence was based on several factors beyond the circumstantial evidence already known to the public. German investigators had spent 3 years building their case, examining every aspect of Bruckner's life and activities around the time of Madeleine's disappearance. One area of focus was Bruckner's communications and associations during his time in Portugal. Investigators discovered that he had been in contact with other criminals and had discussed his activities with several individuals. These conversations potentially included admissions about his involvement in serious crimes. The investigation also examined Bruckner's pattern of behavior after significant crimes. In each case, he had shown similar patterns of immediately distancing himself from evidence and fleeing to avoid detection. The current investigation has benefited from improved coordination between German, Portuguese, and British authorities. If you found this investigation compelling, please subscribe to Disturbingly True. Stay updated on this developing story and other major crime cases. Your support helps us continue bringing you in-depth analysis of the cases that captivate the world.